Hello, my name is Florian and I welcome you to IT Tech Tips. Congratulations! For the moment, this is the last episode in the Lab series. If you made it this far, you already know how to set up and run a Windows environment for a small company. But there's much more to it. At the end of this episode, I will suggest additional topics and I would be interested to know which topics are especially useful for you, so I may create additional episodes for this Lab series in the future. By now, you already know how to centrally manage a lot of things, like assigning IP addresses by using a DHCP server, like name resolution by using a DNS server. You can create users and groups, and you know about file permissions and share permissions and how to set up shares and connect the shares automatically when a user logs in. But there are literally thousands more settings you can centrally manage by using Group Policy Objects, or short GPO. You can even extend this amount of settings, for example for line of business applications, by updating the group policy in the Active Directory. In this episode, we will have a closer look at 3 important settings you can centrally manage with Group Policy Objects: setting folder options, setting a background picture, and last but not least, mounting network shares to a client. Let's have a look. Alright, before you begin this episode, please make sure that acme-dc01 and acme-router are running and the clients are shut down. Now go to acme-dc01, right-click on the Windows logo at the bottom left and navigate to Group Policy Management. As always, I suggest that you pin this icon to the taskbar, as we're going to use it more often in the future if there are any future videos. Maximize the window and make sure that you can clearly see the selection tree on the left side. Now open your domain and you will notice that there are the same organizational units which you created in Active Directory users and computers in one of the previous episodes. Also, for repetition, notice the users which are in the organizational unit domain normal users. Now go back to the Group Policy Management and navigate to the organizational unit domain normal users. Right-click on it and select Create a GPO in this domain and link it here. What does this mean? If you create a GPO, it will be created on the top level, on the domain level, and referenced to the organizational units you select. So you can create one group policy object and reference it to several organizational units. If you delete the group policy object from an organizational unit, it will still remain on the domain level, but not on this specific organizational unit anymore where you have just deleted it. That's important to know. It is also considered best practice to create one GPO for one purpose. So if you want to create a GPO for mapping network drives, create this one GPO with only the settings for mapping the network drives and not other settings, because there are so many settings you can manage with group policy objects. You will lose control over it in no time if you mix them up all in one group policy object. So one GPO for one setting. Click on the link and give the GPO a clear name which states what the GPO does. So in our case, we call it Set Folder Options because we're setting the folder options for our clients with this GPO. The warning message here states the exact same thing I just said. If you change something in this GPO, it will apply to all other places this same GPO is referenced to. Click OK. And now you have an empty GPO here at Domain Normal Users. And now we're going to set some settings within this GPO. Right-click on it and select Edit. Again, maximize the window and make sure you can see the 3 on the left side. And here you will notice that we have 2 sections: Computer Configuration and User Configuration. Generally speaking, the computer configuration applies to the computer, so to all users who log into this computer, and user configuration are meant to apply only to a specific user or to a group of users to which this group policy object is assigned to. It's not always clear which setting applies to which, despite we have these 2 sections, so working with GPOs always implies experimentation until you get it working right. You will get used to it. In this case, we're using the user configuration section and navigate to Preferences, Control Panel Settings, and then to Folder Options. Right-click in the empty space and select New Folder Options, at least Windows Vista. Otherwise, it will not work with our Windows 10 clients. Here you can see the options, which are the same you could set manually on a client PC. But here you can control them centrally in your domain, and the user will not be able to overwrite these settings on his client PC, because the group policy objects in the domain always win over the locally set policy objects on the client or over settings set on the client by the user. Now watch closely which settings I will set. I'm gonna uncheck Hide extensions for known file types because I always want the file extensions like txt or exe to be visible for each file on the client for security reasons. And I also don't want to remember each folder's view settings because the client should not be able to have different view settings for different folders. And I'm gonna uncheck Use the sharing wizard. Then click OK to confirm and exit the editor for this group policy object. You can now start Acme-Client 01 to test this setting because the setting is already active. It's important to know if you had Acme-Client 01 already running and the user logged in, it will take up to 90 minutes until this group policy object would be active on the client. So that's why it's important that you had the client shut down before beginning this episode. If you didn't do that, you can now reboot Acme-Client 01. Then you go to Change User, so we can log in with daisy.duck. Our highly secure password you already know from the previous episodes. Go to the File Explorer. Navigate to the shares, which are mapped automatically by using our login scripts we created in the last episode. As you can see, the file extensions are visible despite we have logged in for the very first time with DaisyDuck on Acme-Client 01. So this proves that our group policy object is active and working. Now let's add a background pictures to our client PCs automatically, centrally managed with a group policy object, for corporate identity reasons and because it's fun. As you can see, I have already prepared a background image which I stored on my host computer where the Oracle VirtualBox is running. You can use any picture you like, but you have to make sure that it's a JPEG. As in the previous chapter, navigate in the group policy management to our organizational unit domain normal users and create a new GPO. By right-clicking on it, create new GPO, and this one we call Set Acme Corp Background Picture. Click OK. Right-click on this and edit. Again, this is a user configuration. So go to User Configuration, Administrative Templates, Desktop, again Desktop, and you can click on Standard on the bottom of this window so we have more space to view the settings. And here you see we have various options to set and modify the wallpaper, which is another name for the background picture. Double-click on Desktop Wallpaper and enable this setting. In the field Wallpaper Name, you have to provide a path to a share where this wallpaper is stored. Again, it must be a JPEG. Now we have to create a share for that and store the wallpaper there. So open the File Explorer and navigate to the place where we have created our shares. Right-click in the empty space and create a new folder. And we're gonna call this folder Deploy. Open the Properties, go to Security to make the appropriate settings so every user has read access to deploy. You have learned how to do this in this episode. Read access will suffice. Click OK. Open the folder and then drag and drop the background picture from your desktop or wherever it's stored to Acme-DC01. If drag and drop does not work, you probably have not installed and configured the client extensions for this virtual PC. So here's the link to the episode. You should do that now first before continuing. Now that you have this wallpaper stored in our deploy folder in our share, you can test that you can access this wallpaper. Because if you cannot access it, the group policy object will also not be able to access it and the client will not get the wallpaper. Enter the share path in the address bar and as you can see, Acme Corp background.jpg is listed. Now copy the path you have just entered, navigate back to the group policy editor and enter the path with the file name of the background picture. There are different options of how this picture should be displayed, in the center, filled, cropped. We choose fit and click OK. Close the editor and navigate to Acme-Client 01. As you can see, we are still logged in at Acme-Client 01 and we did not receive the background picture. This is for the same reason I've told you a few minutes ago that this group policy objects take up to 90 minutes, depending on which group policy setting it is, until they're active. So open a command prompt on Acme-Client 01 and run it as administrator. Since the logged in user daisy.doc is not an administrator or does not have administrative permissions, you have to provide administrative permissions on this client. And since we've created our user client admin, which has local administrative permissions in one of the previous episodes, linked here, you will enter the credentials of client admin. Here we go. And with the following command, you can force all group policy objects to be applied right now, so you don't have to wait up to 90 minutes. The command is gpupdate/force. As you can see in the background, despite we ran this command, which applies all group policy objects right now, the background picture did not change. That's why I've told you a few minutes ago, working with group policy object always involves a little bit of experimentation. This specific group policy for changing the background picture only applies when the user logs in. Log out and log back in with daisy.doc, or select another user, it doesn't matter. And ta-da! There's our background picture. As I have mentioned in the last episode, we can also map the network shares to the user with using a GPO. That's what we're going to do now. On our domain controller Acme-DC01, navigate to Active Directory Users and Computers, to the organizational unit Domain Normal Users, and choose the properties of Client Admin. As you can clearly see in the Profile tab, Client Admin has no login script applied. That's okay for this specific user. But if you choose the properties of the other users, you will see that they have a login script applied, which we used in the last episode for mapping the network share. This we have to remove now, so we can test that our group policy object we're going to create is working. Otherwise, we wouldn't know if the mapping is from the login script or from the group policy object. So remove the login script mapping from all these users. Then navigate to the File Explorer. Go to the place where the login script is stored and delete the login script, just to make absolutely sure that no client is using this login script anymore. Then go to the Group Policy Management Editor, to the organizational unit Domain Normal Users, and create a new GPO called Network Drive Mapping. Click OK to confirm, and you see that we now have 3 GPOs in this organizational unit referenced. Again, this is a user configuration, so go to the User Configuration section, Preferences, Windows Settings, and Drive Maps. Right-click in the empty space and select New Mapped Drive. As you can see, we have different options here: create, replace, update, and delete. Since many of the clients will still have the mapping enabled from the login script, we first want to delete this mapping when this GPO runs on the client. So choose the action delete, and we're going to delete or unmap all network drives beginning with the letter D, so it's D, E, F, G, etc. Click OK to confirm, and select the new mapped drive again, and this time we're choosing update. Update will only remap the drive if there's a change, for example a different UNC path to the share, and we're going to enter the path to our share you should know by now: acme-dc01/shares. Don't forget the 2 backslashes at the beginning. Choose the checkbox reconnect, so the network drive gets reconnected also when for some reason the group policy object could not be applied. And here you can even enter a label for this share. We just call it shares for Acme Corp. Then you can provide a drive letter you would like to have for this share. We are using the drive letter M, and confirm by clicking OK. Here you can see that these 2 settings are in a specific order. That's important. So we first delete the previous mappings and then we update or create a map for our network share. If the order was reversed, this would not work, because we would then map the network drive and delete it a few microseconds later. So there would in fact never be a mapping at all. So make sure that the order is first delete, then map. You can exit the editor, and here you also see that the group policy objects themselves also have a specific order. The first will run first and the third will run last. So if you would have 2 attributes in the first and in the third group policy object, and the value of these attributes would be different, the third would override the value of the first. That's why it's so important that you have only 1 group policy object for 1 purpose. That's okay. And again, you can switch to Acme-Client 01 and log in with the user Donald Duck. Open the File Explorer and check that the share exists, and it does, with the drive letter M and the label shares for Acme Corp. Then sign out and log in with another user, for example Mickey Mouse. This user has never logged in to Acme-Client 01 before, and you see Everything is working also for another user. The drive is mapped and the background picture is here. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the lab series. Confettis for everyone. Of course, there would be much more to learn. For example, backing up our environment, or storing user files in a redundant way by using a RAID, or setting up multiple servers and additional domain controllers for redundancy if one server fails. We haven't talked yet about monitoring, for example centralized performance monitoring, or about handling and analyzing events in a central location to know what's going on with the clients. If you're especially interested in one of the topics I've just mentioned or in another topic, please let me know down in the comment section so I may create an additional episode for this lab series in the future. I hope you enjoyed this lab series and that you've learned a lot. Please let me know in the comment section what could be improved in the future. The next few videos will be about various IT topics. I will cover them in separate, smaller episodes. Stay tuned, subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next episode. See you next time.